life and confidence coach Dianna Leeder, and this is my podcast, the Crave More Life Roadshow. It's here we talk about emotional hits and lovingly kicking our own asses to get through them. Just so you know, it always comes down to being your beautiful, sassy self, living and loving from you, no matter what. So join me to hear about the healing journeys of other women, and you just might become a DIY ass kicker too. Hey listeners, welcome back to the Roadshow. I am honored to introduce our Men of the Men's Book guest today, singer-songwriter Joe Uveges. You'll find Joe's full bio in the show notes. So welcome to the Roadshow, Joe. I'm really honored that you're here and looking forward to our chat.
Thanks, Dianna. I'm excited to be here. I appreciate this opportunity.
So maybe we can start with what we've done with the other guys, and that is your concept of transcendence, because it's different for everyone.
It is, yeah. My concept of transcendence. I guess my sense about what's happened to me is that I've watched myself change in how I'm experiencing the world. Mm-hmm. And that change, it's very gradual. I mean, we have these. I mean, it seems like everyone in this group of authors have all had somewhat catastrophic or certainly difficult suffering events that have precipitated this change for them. The actual change, though, is slow. It's slow. And it's wandering. I think that would be the other word I would use. And how it's affected me is that I have found that and I'm not saying that I don't judge. I certainly still do, but I have found that I am wandering a lot of the time between my sense of myself as a small self, my ego. Okay, in a sense, and then on this other side, this large self, this big S self, that is what I see as my eternal soul, and I'm working at all times on a continuum between these two things, and it's not good or bad. It's mostly recognizing that I am somewhere in this continuum and seeing where I am and how it's affecting my specific moment, this day, this time. So for me, I think this idea of transcendence is that as I'm playing a little bit more on the soul plane, I'm able to experience the world in a more gentle, a more welcoming, a less rigid way. And I think that probably would encapsulate what I would say is transcendence, or has been my journey into the transcendency, if that word even exists.
Well, it does now. I think we just made it up. Yeah.
This is my moment. I guess I'm done here, God.
And you thought you were famous because you're a singer and songwriter. There's more.
Transcendency. Who knew?
Transcendency. I love it. So, what was it I mean, obviously we know about your son's death, and that's got to be, losing a child has got to be one of the most difficult things in the world for any of us. But what were the pieces why did you choose transcendence? And I realize that, yes, it's ongoing, and it is a change, but and maybe you just didn't want to be in that negative place, that denser energy place, but maybe you can tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, that desert energy place is a good word for it, actually. And choosing is also, I think we do choose. I belong to a suicide Facebook survivors group for parents, and when I joined the group, it's probably been 5.5 years now. There was about 4,000 members, and there are now more than 22,000 in the 5 years. It's quite difficult. And I've watched a lot of my compatriots on this group really struggle with not being able to move past this event. And sometimes it's that they get so caught up in the story of how their child or why their child chose to die, um, that they can't extricate themselves somehow from either the guilt or the shame or the victimhood of that experience. And for whatever reason, I can't really tell you why this is true, but I never felt like I was a victim to my son's death. I felt an extraordinary amount of shame. I felt an extraordinary amount of guilt. And having somehow missed my son's suffering, the quality of my son's suffering, is something that I have to live. I do live with that. I mean, that's not something that I can just set aside, because that's part of the lesson for me. Is that I did contribute in some ways to my son's suffering, okay, and I'm also not responsible for his choice. It's but and this is a tension that I have to live within all the time. About at some point you have to choose how you want to move forward. And I was desperate. I will say that I was desperate. I was in agony. I didn't think that I would ever find happiness again. And when I heard this, and I talk about this in the story, when I heard this tale of another local woman suffering, who had spent 17 years in bed with an undiagnosed illness, I was moved. And I actually, when I reached out to her, I actually said this, that I only want to hear from people who've suffered. That's there's something about the camaraderie and knowledge that someone else has struggled mightily, that gives them the for me a certain, it's like a PhD or some, there's some quality that they carry now, especially if they've come through it with some degree of elegance, that I want to know how they did this. I wanted to know that. And meeting this person for me was an extraordinary moment. I felt it was destined. I'm almost to the opinion now, and I'm still playing with this, but I'm almost to the opinion now that everything that happens to us has a certain destination aspect to it. That my suffering was my son's death. I should be specific about it. My son's suicide was not an accident. That my son's journey on this plane was an extraordinary one, and it led inexorably to this moment, which has led me and my family and his friend group and our community into a new place. And we've had probably 8 or 9 people now who've come to us and said, I decided not to commit suicide, not to die by suicide, because of how I saw Andrew's experience with your family, how devastating it was. And I just didn't want to do that to my family. Mm-hmm. I just did not want to do it. And I think we're at 8 right now, is the number. And a lot of those were young people. And some of them were not. Some of them were 40-year-old people that they witnessed this from the outside, and they're also witnessing how my family is dealing with this. We're working it. You can't, grief. I feel like grief is such a has such a capacity for transformation if you let it work you. But you have to do the work. It's every day. In the beginning, it was all day long. It never stopped. Mm-hmm. I would, I would pray. I was driving to Denver at the time, and I would pray all the way up and pray all the way back. In the beginning, I was praying the rosary because I just needed to shut my mind off. And it gave me an opportunity to do that. And I would literally sob in the car driving to Denver. It's about an hour drive. And every car that I would stay in the right-hand lane, and every car that passed me on the left, I would turn my head to the right so I wouldn't see the tears streaming down my face. And this was my drive to Denver and back for about a year. And then, then things start to shift, and then you're not working it quite so hard. And then you get to the 2-year mark, and the 2-year mark is important because the first year is shock. You're having, every single day is the first time in this year that I'm experiencing my life without my son. The second year, the sinking in of that grief is even deeper. It's worse really in the second year, because you feel also that sense of more removed from who he was in our lives. Then, you get to the 3rd year and the 4th year and the 5th year, and it's softer, but it's still, there's moments, there's days almost weekly where my breath is taken away and I am racked again. But it's gentler, and it doesn't last anywhere near as long. It's a few minutes of extraordinary pain, and I'm grateful for it. I'm actually grateful for it now. Because that little momentary shattering, reminds me what I'm doing here now. I'm here for a reason. I'm doing this work. You and I are sitting here having this conversation, about this incredible book that these 25 men have generated out of their life experiences. And as I'm reading my way through this book, I'm watching people transform before my eyes. And every story is so different, but there's similarities as well. So it's yeah. Did I answer your question? I'm not sure.
You did. You absolutely did. And I just want to say it's so to be in a different place and want to be working your own purpose at this point is huge. And I my head's going back to those 8 people that have changed their minds, made a different choice because of you and the impact that you've had on them. That's incredible, Joe. It's incredible.
And because of my son. I mean, I give him, I honor him, right? I mean, the choice to not be a victim came out of the knowledge immediately that my son had done something extraordinary. I didn't understand it. Okay, I didn't have any way to even begin to understand it. But I knew on some level, because he was a really intense kid. He was a kid, he just lived life in his own way, and with no apologies, very powerful kid, a wrestler, a super physical person, and I never had the sense. I know he suffered, but I didn't have this. I didn't have this sense that he had been beaten down in some way. I felt like he was moving into the unknown, and we all have to do that. Yeah. At some point we're not only in the death realm, but in the realms of our life, we're living inside of a mystery, and the more that we accept that, the deeper we can go. Right. And it's exciting. It's frightening, it's an adventure. Mm-hmm. It's petrifying sometimes, and this is life.
Yeah. So in terms of transcendence, what's, everything that you're telling me is saying that transcendence is actually available to us when we when we accept, when we acknowledge, when we make those connections, and then decide, what are we going to do with that? That may be very simple, but
it's actually, yeah, it's simple and elegant and incredibly powerful. So the work that I'm doing now is I journal every morning, and I specifically journal, and for those of you who are who are like no Christians, for God's sakes, I journal with Jesus every morning, and I know it sounds crazy, but at one time I was studying to be a priest when I was 25 years old, and I decided to enter the seminary, and this didn't make it into the story. But I went to Catholic University, and I was doing a graduate program, an MA in theology, and it was pretty clear it was going to be a difficult road for me. Celibacy was going to be a problem, I'm working my way through the program, and they have you working with both a spiritual director and a psychiatrist. And in March of 1986, the whole class, it was 32 of us, I believe, in that freshman class, studying to be priests from all over the country, and all very smart, very interesting people. A lot of the most incredible people didn't really survive that process. The Catholic Church kind of wants, right now at least, it kind of wants a priest that's a little bit more encapsulated. How's that? Okay. Anyway, when we went on this retreat to the Maryland countryside, there'd been a snowfall the night before, and we had gotten up early in the morning to do a prayer session, and we'd all gone back to our rooms. And I was meditating in my room in early March of '86, and I was just sitting in a chair with my hands folded, open, and Jesus appears to me. I mean, like a foot and a half in front of my face, and I'm looking into his eyes, these incredibly beautiful eyes, and he doesn't say a word, and he reaches into my chest and touches the top left-hand side of my heart, and the instant he touches it, and I'm both experiencing this kind of visually and also physically. I'm almost outside of myself, seeing his heart actually his hand touching the top of my heart, and I burst into tears. The second he touched my heart, I lost it, and what I was experiencing was the pain of my mother's death, which had happened 5 years before, and he holds this spot, just looking just so tenderly into my face for minutes, and I'm just crying. And after a while, the feeling dissipates, and he smiles at me, just the most tender smile, and does this, like a mother would do when their child has hurt themselves. And then he reaches down to the bottom of the right-hand side of my heart. And there's some kind of metaphysical realm I don't really understand, but other people have told me about this before. And when he touches the bottom of the right-hand side of my heart, it is excruciating again. And I start wailing again, but I have no sense as to what it's about. Like nothing is in my mind. I am just experiencing this awful pain. And he holds it and holds it and holds it. And finally it dissipates. And again, he gives me the tiniest smile, and he's gone. No words, nothing like that. If you asked me to describe him, I could. But if I describe him, and people have asked me this, if I describe him, any description I would give of him, your mind would immediately take and say, oh, well, no, I mean, that wouldn't be Jesus. I mean, he'd be, swarthier than that. His eyes couldn't be that color, or, whatever. He couldn't be clean shaven. Oh, no, of course. And that's what our ego does. It would immediately project, your vision of whoever Jesus might be onto my vision, and it's not helpful. So it doesn't matter what he looks like. I know who he was. I know what the experience was. That's my backstory. So when I came to this work, this woman that I work with, Franny Rose is her name. She doesn't care what you call God. You can call God whomever, whatever you want. Okay. Jesus, God, Daddy, Mommy, Holy Mother. It literally does not matter. Earth Mother. It's your journey. Okay,
Yeah.
it's your
Love
journey.
that.
I chose Jesus because of this experience, and I thought maybe there was a reason why he came to me. Okay, in that way at that time, 30 whatever 2 years before. And so when I began journaling, I journaled with him, and I have experienced, and I do this every morning. I mean, part of the journey is I do this every morning. I try to get up early. Sometimes it's nothing more than clearing my mind, and that's as far as I get. And I never get to asking him a question, okay? But that's the process is basically clearing my mind, placing myself in this space, okay? What am I experiencing in my body? What am I carrying in my mind right now that's a distraction? Listing all those things, and then asking a question, or maybe even just saying, Lord, do you hear me? Are you with me?
Yeah.
And then writing down the immediate thought impulse that comes. Okay, and you said, and this is the riff on the word you said early, which was acceptance. If I've heard accepting, I've heard this hundreds of times now. I've been doing this work for more than almost 4.5 years. Joe, accept everything. Accept everything. There's nothing wrong here. Talk about messing with my ego. There's nothing wrong here. How can that be? Because I don't understand what's happening here. I don't have the big picture. I can't see your journey. I can't see my daughter's journey or my grandson's journey. I can only witness my own, the work that I have to do inside of me. This is my work. And there's lots of great organizations doing this, Al-Anon and AA, and all these organizations are aimed at allowing other human beings to do their own work and you doing yours. So this is a lot of the message I've gotten has been keep focusing on the inward work and allow your life being changed to change your outside world. And I will say that on the third day that I started this journaling protocol, and I'm feeling this beautiful sense of spirit maybe right now. On the third day I started this journaling protocol, I didn't tell my wife what was going on, okay? And she said to me over breakfast, she said, Joe, what's going on with you? What are you doing? You're different. I can feel it. And I said, I've journaled in this protocol for 3 days, and I said it's been remarkable. And she said, I can feel the difference. I can feel whatever you're doing, whatever you're working at, I can feel you change right now. And she's kind of joined me in this a much more kind of a different way. And my wife does things her own way, and she's an amazing human being, and I love her dearly. But every Sunday we get together and have coffee, and we have an hour and a half or 2 hour coffee clutch where we talk about what the week's been. Where are you now? We'll share maybe a day or two of our journaling protocol. We're in a place relationally that I would never have dreamed possible with her. I just talk about transformation. Doing the inner work and allowing this relationship to be transformed. My wife she's everything. Incredible human being. Anyway.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Wow. Your stuff is so incredibly powerful and insightful. There are so many pieces of it that we could talk about we could talk about each one on a different show, and have some really great conversations about it. I want to thank you for being as open as you have been. I mean, that's kind of what it's coming into is, just thank you for doing that, because it's important. It's important, and it's not just for us. It's for everybody around us, whoever we touch, that when you take all that learning that you have experienced, and people know about it, people know, and they see you and they see how you interact. I know it may seem a little trivial, but you can tell a transcendent man from a man who, still has his own work to do. You can tell.
Well, and I'm nowhere near done, Dianna. I still make mistakes, regularly. But usually I can see them fairly quickly, and usually I can have enough sense to apologize, or at least say, hey, or to not hit send on that email, You know what I mean? To reread what I've just written and say, you know what? And this is the most critical thing that, Jesus or God has said to me in the whole 4.5 years I've been doing this. Joe, that's probably not very helpful.
That's simple enough.
That's simple enough. You know what? It's not helpful. You're right. You're absolutely right. That's not helpful. So.
Wow. Well, you know what? We're all human, right? We're all human. This is our human experience, and there are triggers, right? The world offers us triggers all the time. And,
exactly.
and Scott Holmes, my partner in all this. So, what is that he says? Masculinity without being an asshole. You don't. You can be. You can be in that place of honoring yourself and honoring others, and I like to think about it as being a place of unconditional love. Absolutely. For yourself, and then for everybody else too, and that kind of changes the game a bit. But you can do that without responding to those triggers.
Right. And of course, what part of me is being triggered? What part of me wants to respond from the trigger? It's that ego side.
Yeah.
It's exactly my mind. Exactly right. Whatever. The Buddhists talk about this all the time. That. About suffering. Yes, I had to do my work. I had to grieve. I'm in the middle of that, and a lot of my suffering is I'm bringing it on myself because I'm working out of that plane, right? In this plane, my eternal me, your eternal you, we're okay. We're okay. Everyone's going home. My ego doesn't want to believe that, but I have come to believe that's true, Anyway.
Yeah. I love that. I do. Thank you. So just one more question, and that is, what are your hopes for this book?
Oh my goodness. My hopes for the book, I guess, obviously I would love, hundreds of thousands of copies of it to be downloaded, or sold. I mean, that would be wonderful. But really beyond that, that's kind of the aside. Really what I hope for the book is that as each person reads it, they see something of themselves in some of these stories. I mean, I'm about a third of the way through it right now, and even though the stories are different, so much of the journey I can relate to. My own journey as a man, my own journey as a human being, my own suffering, my own my own transcendency or whatever that word was you played with before. All those things. I just hope that the reader takes from this hope that there's something that they're inside of a bigger story. That's what I hope for. That they can see themselves inside of a bigger story, and to embrace that, no matter what it looks like.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, it's all about Yes, the book, we want people to buy the book, go and get the book. But it's having the book and reading those stories that is really the biggest gift.
And I do think there's something, I was kind of cursing the 3,000 word limit, when we got into this, because I felt like I had so much more to say. But there is something about being concise with it. And as I'm reading my way through it, I see the advantage to that. There's not a lot of extraneous things. The nuts and bolts are there. All these writers are beautiful writers. You guys have done a great job with editing. And, I think it is a transformative book.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's no accident that the 25 people that are involved in this book are doing this. I feel like every single person has been directed into this place. I said no to this book 8 months ago. I couldn't see my way through. I couldn't see how it was possible. And then when the book was kind of pushed back about 3 months and it came into my lap again, I'm like, yeah, I am ready to do this. I can do this now,
Yeah.
It was still frightening though.
It's a little scary for sure. Yeah, for sure. But it's funny. I don't think that things happen just by chance. So you were meant to be in this book for sure. And there was a reason, maybe part of that reason was why we didn't, why it didn't start when it was supposed to, why we were delayed in that. So yeah, I'm very happy that you're here. Yeah, your chapter is definitely going to have a huge impact on readers, and I'm so grateful for that.
Thank you so much, Dianna. I appreciate it.
So, listeners, I just want to remind you. Well, thank you first of all for being here and being part of this story. It's incredible. I want to encourage you to go and get the book so that you can take whatever is there for you and leave what isn't, doesn't serve you, leave it behind. That's okay. And I also want to say thank you and remind you that just by being here today and listening to Joe's story and our discussion, you are kicking your own ass. You are taking responsibility. And everybody laughs at that one. You are supporting your own awareness in whatever way is coming to you. And if it comes to you at the right time, then that's awesome. So thank you for being here. Joe, thank you again. And we will see you all next time. If you like today's podcast, hit subscribe at the bottom on your way out and come find me at cravemorelife.com for even more DIY ass kicking.